Two major police departments under fire.
This conduct is unacceptable. It is heartbreaking.
The Department of Justice taking aim at Louisville and Memphis over police-related deaths that rallied the nation, accusing the departments of patterns of racist behavior. Plus,
then there are some small children. They are my favorite personalities. I think about them and I am like, so what will happen to them?
pushed out of their schools, workplaces, and homes under Taliban rule. Tonight, we take you inside a school and meet the brave 25-year-old ensuring women and children are receiving an education and a chance to dream. And
Sammy, you do what your heart says you have to.
from Oscar nomination to Oscar nomination, Michelle Williams and how she looked internally for inspiration for her latest Best Actress nod in The Fabelmans, and how she's fighting for pay equity in the industry.
I felt like I was being called upon. I felt like I didn't have a choice. I felt like I found myself in the middle of this moment, and I better learn to speak out.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Trevor Alden for Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We're following all those stories and much more, including developing news out of Virginia, what the attorney at the center of the case involving that 6-year-old who shot his teacher is now saying about that child's legal fate. Plus, the deadly road trip to Mexico for 4 Americans from South Carolina. 2 of them survived, 2 killed in a kidnapping. Autopsy results revealing new information about their deaths, and TikTok threat, why the Biden administration may soon have the power to ban the app across the country. We're going to speak to one of the key players who's pushing a bill to grant the president that power. Our correspondents are fanned across the country, covering it all for us tonight. But we begin with the Justice Department's sobering conclusion to its investigation into the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department, finding a damning pattern of illegal and discriminatory behavior, including unlawful traffic stops, detentions, harassment, and racial bias. All of it disproportionately targeting black people. The DOJ's probe was launched after the deadly shooting of Breonna Taylor. She was killed in a nighttime no-knock raid at her home in 2020. It turned out she had no connection to the alleged crime that police were investigating. Attorney General Merrick Garland, speaking in Louisville today, called the misconduct heartbreaking. And tonight, the DOJ announced a new investigation into the Memphis Police Department following the death of Tyree Nichols earlier this year. Our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, leads us off.
Tonight, Attorney General Merrick Garland flying to Louisville to deliver a stunning rebuke of the city's police department, detailing what he believes is a troubling pattern of racial bias and constitutional rights violations.
This conduct is unacceptable. It is heartbreaking.
The Attorney General visibly impacted by a DOJ investigation, finding systemic abuse against the city's black residents, including the disproportionate use of excessive force.
Some officers have demonstrated disrespect for the people they are sworn to protect. Some have videotaped themselves throwing drinks at pedestrians from their cars, insulted people with disabilities, and called black people monkeys, animal, and boy.
The Justice Department's 2-year probe launched after the 2020 police shooting death of Breonna Taylor during a botched raid.
Where's the emergency?
I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
Louisville Metro PD executing a so-called no-knock warrant, killing Taylor, who had no connection to the alleged crime they were investigating.
That it took this to even have somebody look into this department. I don't know.
Today's report finding more than 60% of no-knock search warrants and forced entries into buildings involve black people. The alarming findings come as the Department of Justice announces they're opening a separate review into the Memphis Police Department after the horrific beating death of Tyree Nichols earlier this year.
Damn, I didn't do anything.
The 5 officers charged in Nichols' death were members of the now deactivated Scorpion unit, formed to patrol high-crime hotspots. The DOJ now examining the use of specialized units like Scorpion within law enforcement across the country.
A lot of people calling for those units to be disbanded. Pierre Thomas joins me now. And Pierre, I do want to turn back to Louisville because I know there's been alarming findings there before in the past. So what do officials believe is going to change this time around?
Well, Trevor, the hope is that the city will agree to a consent decree mandating changes that will be enforced by a federal judge. But in light of such damning allegations, it will take not only a change in training and culture, it will take time to build trust, especially in the black community, Trevor.
It's certainly true. Pierre Thomas, thank you. And next we head to Mexico, and new information tonight in the kidnappings of 4 Americans. One of the survivors told her mother the terrifying details of how she witnessed her friends being shot. Once again, our Matt Rivers is in Mexico City tonight.
Tonight, new details emerging about that horrific kidnapping of 4 Americans that left 2 of them dead after they drove to a Mexican border town for cosmetic surgery. The mother of survivor Latavia Tay McGee telling CNN that the white minivan carrying McGee and friends Eric James Williams, Zindell Brown, and Shaeed Woodard was first hit by a van and then gunfire erupted.
Shaeed and Zell and Eve, they all got shot at the same time, and she watched them die.
Tonight, this new photo showing McGee in an ambulance moments after she was rescued in Mexico. The 4 entering Matamoros around 9 a.m. on Friday so that McGee could get that cosmetic surgery. Nearly 2 hours later, gunmen opening fire on the group, then loading them into a pickup truck. Officials say the gunmen then took the group to various locations, including a clinic, to cause confusion and throw off authorities. After a massive manhunt, authorities finding McGee and Williams still alive inside this wooden house early Tuesday morning, nearly 8 miles from where they were taken. The bodies of Woodard and Brown found at that same location, covered in blankets, according to a source close to the investigation. That same source also saying one of the men was wearing a surgical gown, though it's unclear if he received medical treatment before he died.
And we know the families of those victims want answers. Matt Rivers joins us now. Matt, when are the survivors and the bodies of those victims expected to return home?
Yeah, Trevor, the 2 surviving victims of this kidnapping are already back on U.S. soil. One of them back home in South Carolina, or about to be, rather. The other victim, Eric James Williams, is in the hospital, still injured at this point. Meanwhile, the 2 victims who lost their lives during this kidnapping, their bodies, according to a source telling ABC News, their bodies remain in Mexico at this point, likely to be repatriated sometime tomorrow. Trevor?
Matt Rivers, thank you. Next, new developments in the case of a 6-year-old accused of shooting his teacher in January. Newport News Commonwealth's attorney says he will not file charges against that child. In an interview, attorney Howard E. Gwynn said he does not believe a 6-year-old can have criminal intent, which is required to pursue a case. Now, Gwynn said he is not deciding whether someone else may be charged in this case until he finishes his review. Also tonight, yet another incident in the nation's skies. A fight broke out on a flight from Dallas to Phoenix before it could take off, with passengers stepping in to try to stop it. And this is the latest in a growing number of airline-related incidents, prompting many to ask what is going on. Here's transportation correspondent Gio Benitez.
Tonight's shocking new video of a brawl erupting on board a Southwest Airlines flight. Fist flying as a fight breaks out between 2 men on this plane before it took off from Dallas to Phoenix Monday. Other passengers attempting to separate the men. This video showing one of the men trying to explain what happened.
I'm telling everybody what happened. He approached me aggressively with my family. I don't play with my family. Tell him what happened. Tell him what you did.
Witnesses say both men were removed from the plane. It comes after that terrifying mid-air attack, a passenger seen here trying to stab a flight attendant multiple times on a cross-country United flight. After so many incidents in the skies and close calls on the runways, the acting chief of the FAA in the hot seat on Capitol Hill, and we pressed him on what lawmakers were asking. Mr. Nolan, I think that the average American is probably wondering what is going on. At least 6 close calls here. Does the FAA have a grasp on the situation?
The FAA absolutely has a grasp on this situation, and it's something that we look at every day. I can tell you that the system is strong, is safe, and resilient. We operate the most complex airspace system in the world, bar none.
And Gio Benitez joins me now. Gio, the FAA is holding a safety summit next week. So what are they going to be focusing on there?
So, Trevor, they are definitely going to be looking at themselves, right? Because we want to know what is happening in those air traffic control towers. We want to know if there's enough staffing there. We want to know what's happening at the airports. They're also going to be bringing in the airlines there, the labor unions. They're all going to come there. And basically what they're going to do is they're going to have a big brainstorming session and say, what can we do better here? What can we make safer? We know that flying is safe, but we also know that we don't want one of these close calls
to become a tragedy, Trevor.
Gio Benitez for us in Washington. Gio, thank you. And staying in Washington, where House Republicans today held their first public hearings on the origins of COVID-19, with all the witnesses testifying they believe it came from a leak at a Chinese lab, and that includes testimony from the former CDC director under President Trump. Here's ABC senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott.
Tonight, Republicans ramping up their investigation into the origins of COVID-19, holding their first public hearing to tackle the burning question: where did the virus come from?
Discovering the origins is vital. It matters for the future of the world.
All three witnesses invited by Republicans argued the virus was a result of an accidental lab leak in Wuhan, China.
There is no smoking gun proving a laboratory origin hypothesis, but the growing body of circumstantial evidence suggests a gun that is, at very least, warm to the touch.
It comes just days after a report that the Department of Energy suspects with low confidence that the pandemic likely started with a lab leak. The FBI agrees, a conclusion they reached with moderate confidence. Dr. Robert Redfield, the former CDC director under President Donald Trump, testified he was excluded from discussions with Dr. Anthony Fauci and other scientists because he believed that the lab leak theory needed to be investigated.
It was told to me that they wanted a single narrative and that I obviously had a different point of view.
But Dr. Fauci telling Politico that accusation is completely untrue, saying no one excluded anyone. Nearly 3 years after the pandemic started, the intelligence community is still divided on how it all began. 4 other intelligence agencies have determined the virus was more likely spread through natural transmission, a human being exposed to an infected animal. Today, the director of national intelligence was also on Capitol Hill, grilled on when Americans will get an answer.
China has not fully cooperated, and we do think that's a key critical gap that would help us to understand what exactly happened.
And let's bring in Rachel Scott now. Rachel, what's the White House saying about this lab leak theory?
Well, Trevor, the White House is making it clear there is no consensus from the government. They insist the president wants to get to the bottom of this. But tonight, a serious warning from intelligence officials who say the mystery itself is a threat. Trevor?
Rachel Scott, thank you. And another area of concern discussed among top intelligence officials at today's worldwide threats hearing centered around TikTok. For more on that, I'm joined now by Republican Senator John Thune, who, along with Intelligence Committee Chair Senator Mark Warner, has introduced the Bipartisan Restrict Act, which would give the Biden administration more power to combat potential foreign technology threats, including from apps like TikTok. So, Senator Thune, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
It's good to be with you. Thanks, Trevor.
Let's just set the table here. For a lot of people at home, they might just think of TikTok as the place where they watch videos of people dancing or of cats doing silly things. Why is this considered a national security threat?
Well, the owner of TikTok, ByteDance, has tried to access and get information from American citizens and steal their data, steal their information. And there is a concern that this represents a national security threat to the United States. And a lot of these, as we all know, we're in a sort of adversarial relationship with China. There are 6 countries actually that are mentioned in our legislation, which is designed to see that technologies and social media apps that are imported into our country, used by people in this country, aren't being misused by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, to get data and information on American citizens. So it's we've created a robust process to vet some of these social media apps. TikTok, of course, is the one we're talking about the most today.
Have you seen something concrete showing that TikTok has maybe taken Americans' data and given it to China, or is that simply a hypothetical that you're concerned could happen?
No, there's evidence to that effect. And again, we know that a lot of these other technologies that have come in from China, we've had to ban a couple of those in the past. Huawei, ZTE had components in a lot of our wireless networks and broadband networks across the country. So Congress has taken steps to ban those in the past. But instead of doing this on a one-off, kind of a whack-a-mole approach, what this is designed to do is create a holistic way, sort of a whole-of-government way of evaluating and working with our intelligence community to determine whether or not individual applications or, for that matter, technologies represent a national security threat. And if it is determined that they are a national security threat, then clearly steps can be taken to mitigate that, or in some cases ban.
And TikTok did respond last week to a House bill that could also lead to a ban of TikTok. They said, quote, a U.S. ban on TikTok is a ban on the export of American culture and values to the billion-plus people who use our service worldwide. And they noted the, quote, considerable negative impact on the free speech rights of millions of Americans who use and love TikTok. What's your response to that argument that this is infringing on free speech, according to TikTok itself?
That's the argument that TikTok made when they went to court back in 2020. They raised constitutional issues with it. But this is a rule-based approach. It's not specific to TikTok. Obviously, again, we're talking about TikTok here, but it's designed to address technology, social media apps that other countries, particularly hostile countries, try to import into this country to get at data and information from American citizens, or to conduct other types of activities, espionage activities. And that's something we want to know. A country with which we have an adversarial relationship is using this to gather information on American citizens.
And is there a solution with TikTok that is short of a ban? Is banning it the only way to be secure?
I think that's the question, and that's what this process would yield, I believe, or some recommendations about how do you deal with this. Is it, you know, it ultimately could lead to a direct ban, but there are other measures that might be able to be utilized to mitigate the threat, and we won't know that until we go through the process.
It's a bipartisan act. It has the support of the White House. How quickly do you think it might move forward?
Well, I hope quickly. I think it's something that needs to be done. I'm hopeful that we'll have broad bipartisan support. Obviously, the administration signaling support for it is helpful, but I think everybody recognizes this is an issue that needs to be addressed when you live in a very dangerous world, and clearly that's the case today.
And then finally, quickly, Senator Thune, while we have you on another topic, I do want to ask you about that report by Tucker Carlson on Fox News this week, which sought to depict the events of the January 6th riots as mostly peaceful, arguing that they were mainly sightseers there. You were obviously there that day. In your opinion, did that report try to rewrite the history of what happened?
Well, it certainly doesn't reflect the context of what was going on. And I think, you know, when you've got 40-some thousand hours of video, you can probably pick and choose the things that you want to put up. But the fact of the matter is, it was an attack on the Capitol. It was a threat, and it's something that needs to be treated that way. That was true on January 6th of 2021. It's true today, and that you know, the facts aren't going to change.
Senator John Thune, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Trevor.
And staying on the Hill, Republicans on the House Foreign Affairs Committee today sought to rekindle the poignant, painful memories of those frenzied days in August 2021 when Kabul fell to the Taliban. Afghan allies fearing for their lives, scrambling to evacuate their families, and 13 U.S. service members lost their lives in a suicide bombing. Former specialist with the U.S. Army Aidan Gunderson recalled his arrival to Kabul, which coincided with his 21st birthday.
We came to the middle of the runway where there was where blood-saturated, dusty clothing and headscarves smoldered on the ground. These covered the dead bodies that had fallen from the landing gear of the plane that just took off. At this moment, I truly understand that the Afghans were risking everything, even death, to escape the Taliban. I see the faces of all the people we could not save, all those that we left behind.
In Pennsylvania, Republican Representative Scott Perry has called for a full hearing with, quote, the folks at the top, including the Secretaries of Defense and State, as well as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Well, next to the war in Ukraine, the director of U.S. intelligence told Congress today she does not believe Russia will make major territorial gains this year, but the fight could drag on long term. And on the front lines, that battle for the town of Bakhmut rages on. ABC's James Longman is in Ukraine.
Ukrainian forces are holding on in Bakhmut tonight, despite seemingly endless Russian attack. This drone operator taking cover from bombardment right outside the window, but he still holds up his iPad to try and keep the signal connection.
There are rumours of a Ukrainian retreat from Bakhmut, but this is the road that leads to the city. It's been very active all day, and it doesn't feel like they want to give it up anytime soon.
Today, the director of U.S. National Intelligence, Avril Haines, told the U.S. Senate she does not believe Russia will make major territorial gains in Ukraine this year because it's suffering such high casualty rates. But she said Putin is playing the long game.
Putin most likely calculates that time works in his favor and that prolonging the war, including with potential pauses in the fighting, may be his best remaining pathway to eventually securing Russia's strategic interests in Ukraine, even if it takes years.
All right, thanks to James Longman. Now to the fight for access to abortion care in this country. 5 days ago, Utah's governor said he'll sign a recently passed bill that would ban abortion clinics, meaning there's going to be no abortion clinics in Utah starting next year. And this is part of a trend we're seeing play out nationwide, from Texas and Louisiana to Idaho and West Virginia. Abortion procedures are outlawed in nearly a dozen states now, and that number could grow in the months ahead. Our partners at 538 put together an interactive graphic to illustrate just how out of reach access to abortion is for millions of women, with some now having to drive more than 800 miles to the nearest clinic. You can go to the 538 website to see how even more changes to the nation's laws could play out in the weeks and months ahead. Again, that's 538.com. And we still have much more to get to here on Prime. Coming up, a camera captures this dramatic moment. A car slams into a cafe. Those two people sitting right in its path, what they were recording. But next in our Prime Focus this International Women's Day, our story of the fearless women in Taliban-run Afghanistan who are fighting for their future. We go inside an underground school where women found a safe place for now.
Then there are some small children. They are my favorite personalities. I think about them and I'm like, so what will happen to them?
And the Deputy Secretary General of the UN weighs in on the restrictions being imposed on women in Afghanistan and around the globe.
Whenever news breaks,
the crush of families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
In Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. Been a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead.
An alert this morning for dog owners.
And the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
On this International Women's Day, we want to take you inside Taliban-occupied Afghanistan, where women have been disappearing from the workplace, schools, and public life. Tonight, with their rights under attack now more than ever, meet the brave 25-year-old founder behind a network of underground schools who's giving hundreds of women and girls a chance to dream again. And that founder is now in a safe place, so we're able to show her face. But we have to hide the identity of the students and the teachers, as they could be arrested simply because of the act of learning, which has now been made illegal by their own government.
One of my teachers called me and they said, can you watch the TV right now? I was like, yeah, sure. What's happening? She was crying and she said, like, just watch the TV. I saw that there were girls coming out of schools and they were crying. They have been asked to go back to their houses. And I was shocked. Today in Afghanistan, a woman cannot work anywhere She cannot be a teacher, not be a doctor, not be an astronaut, not be an army. She cannot be an engineer. She cannot be a designer. She cannot be a businesswoman. She cannot be anything. She cannot even be a student. The fall of Kabul was not an easy thing. As young generation, especially who were educated and they had their dreams, but now it was all vanished. I was also one of those people that wanted to leave the country. On 21st of December, another shocking decree came up where they closed the doors of the universities for girls. I was really disappointed, but it was expected. I find it impossible for myself not to help. I cannot sit and just watch. When I started the first school, I was searching for teachers. I contacted many of my friends that they had master degrees, and they came together. We made a group in WhatsApp. And within 2 hours, it was more than 600 people.
در اون زمانی که در 21 دسامبر طالبان اعلان کردن که پانتونا باید بسته شود، در اون زمان من در پانتون بودم، در پانتون کابل و دنبال کارهای ماستری خود بودم. زمانی که ما اینجا میایم بر درس خواندن برای ما ترس هست، اما در مقابل ترس ما علاقه ما بود. اگر ما بخوایم در مقابل ترس خود سر خم کنم، یعنی ما باور کردیم که من مردیم.
السلام علیکم. صبح شما بخیر. کی صبح است؟ حال خود چاشت است؟ چاشت نیست؟ چند نفرتان نان خوردن؟ Every day when I wake up, those girls are my motivation. I ask the girls, what do you want? What's your dream? What do you want to be in the future? It was all in the eyes. I remember the eyes of my students on the first day till today. I think we have been a little bit successful in bringing back those shine in the eyes of the students here. The girls are coming to the school like 30 minutes before the class starts, or even 1 hour before the class starts. They see the teachers as their family members, and also especially the girls, that they think of them as their sisters.
من یک حس بسیار خوبی دارم وقتی که اینجا میایم، یعنی تایم ما 1:30 شروع میشه، من یک آماده میشم، اون طرف میرم کاش که من زودتر بیایم در کورس، یعنی یک حس بسیار خوش.
و ما به حیث یک شاگرد صنف 7 به اینجا میایم که
و 16 سال هستم و
خب ما میخوایم که در آینده یک انجینیر شم.
همچنان اینجا که میایم به خاطر درس خواندن میایم و میخوایم که یک جای ترقی کنم، یک جایی برسم که در قله‌های برسم که مردم سر من افتخار کنن.
فقط استاد فرق مایی است که استاد هیچ فرق نداریم، فقط امی که راه‌ها را بر ما بسته کرده.
The activity that me and my teachers and our team are doing is illegal, and 3 different decrees banned schools for girls. All of a sudden, one day, some of the Taliban approached our school. Fortunately, we were not inside the school. They asked the homeowner that some underground or secret school is going on here, despite that it's an illegal activity. The owner of the house told him that I am not aware of what's going on here. Just some girls are gathering together and they are learning religious studies only. So after that, many of the girls were scared and they could not come by the door.
یک چند مدت ما مجبور شدیم خانه خود تغییر بدیم به خاطری که تلاشی خانه به خانه شروع شد و چون دیدیم حساسیت ها خیلی زیاد شده، تلاشی های خانه به خانه شروع شده. ما یک چند مدت مکتب خود بسته کردیم.
یک عدد از کجا بفهمیم که مثبت یا منفی است؟ عددی که مثبت است هیچ وقت علامه نداره و ما قولش هیچ وقت علامه نداره.
I wanted to hide this from my family, but if anything happened to me, my family have to know about all this. So I told them. So most of the time when we sit together, the first thing my mother is looking at me and then she's like, can you please stop that? Can you please not do that and not continue that? And because she's scared. If I stop this work, many of the girls will be forced to get married. Many of them will be dead while they are delivering a baby in a rural area where they do not have access to any clinic. We had 3 students that they wanted to commit suicide. We had many students that were willing to cut their hands. Many of the girls will kill themselves.
این پانتونای ما رو که بسته، پانتونا رو که بسته کرد، مکاتبا رو که بسته کرد، یک حس خیلی ناامید داشتیم ما. یعنی من امون لحظه میخواستم که میخواستم بمرم.
اگه خدا نخواسته این جمع که بسته شد، من خودم رسما خود اگه بگیم استاد نمیشم.
اگه یک وقتی هم بیای مرا استاد کنه تو چرا کار میکنی؟ گفتم من اشتباه انجام نمیدم، من کار اشتباه انجام نمیدم. اگر من کار اشتباه انجام میدم، اگر علم خواندن، اگر تعلیم، اگر آموزش، اگر اشتباه هست، اگر گناه هست، چرا در قرآن گفته شده که اقرا باسم ربک الذی خلق؟ چرا خدا گفته بخوان؟
کجا بودی تو؟ هیچ نیستی، در حکایت نیست. خب مقصد ما بسیار جگرخون شدم که این چیز خوشت نمیاد، زیر نظرت نمیاد.
Then there are some small children. They are my favorite personalities. I think about them and I'm like, so what will happen to them? They never let me stop thinking about how we can make it better.
Okay.
In the past I had some dreams which I don't have anymore. My biggest dream might be freedom. That's all.
Such a simple dream. And since ABC News filmed this story, the founder of this program has shared with us that there's been a raid in a school that they operate. Now, thankfully, no women were there when the raid took place, but it's no certainty that these schools will continue to run with limited resources and the Taliban cracking down. And if you would like to find out more information about these schools and how they run, please visit abcnews.com. We have posted the story there. And on this International Women's Day, our Mona Khosravdi got a chance to ask the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed, about the crisis these women are facing in Afghanistan and what the UN is doing to try to help.
You recently got back from Afghanistan, making you the most senior UN official and also woman, it's important to point out, to meet with the Taliban leaders. Can you tell me a little bit about how that conversation went, and also were you able to bring women's rights to the forefront?
Absolutely. It was a huge task and a half. We did a lot of consultation before we got there with Afghan women who have been in the United States for a couple of decades, those who've come just recently as the Taliban came back in, and many Afghan women within Afghanistan, countries in the neighborhood. They have a right to be in the workplace. In fact, Islam itself, the jihad, was funded by a woman, and the Prophet ﷺ, an employee of a woman. So, these are things we brought to the front, and we were able to have those discussions. They are denying rights to women for education and in the workplace, and that has to be reversed.
And today is International Women's Day, which is a day that highlights women's achievements all over the world. But it also puts a spotlight on the fight for women's rights and also gender inequality, particularly in countries like Afghanistan, where, as you mentioned, women cannot go to work, where women cannot go to school. So what role can the UN play in advocating for women and further pushing their rights in countries, for example, such as Afghanistan?
Well, as the Taliban came back into Afghanistan, the United Nations stayed to deliver because we were very concerned that those reversals would come very quickly. So it was important for us to be there in the humanitarian space to ensure that lives were saved, and the majority of those women, and it had to be women-to-women services, so we shored that up. The international community rightly were concerned and took a position to pause on the funding, we made the case for please don't do that because this will harm women and girls and the vast population that are vulnerable and poor in very harsh circumstances in Afghanistan. So we worked around how to better deliver, even in the most extreme circumstances where these bans were in place. The UN continues to be there in its mission with its country team, deploying whatever space that we can push and expand to ensure that women and girls come back into the workplace, come back to school, continue to get delivered of services that are life-saving.
One concern that we've heard expressed, particularly in Afghanistan, is about young girls being forced into marriage. Can you touch a little bit about the UN's response to preventing child marriages?
Well, this has been something that we've been engaged with around the world. It is a huge challenge to women and girls' rights, where there are harsh laws in place that enable this practice to happen. So what we do is to try to look at the root causes, which is why I say that families, the levels of poverty have to be addressed. So families don't have to give their children away in marriage or otherwise, because in some cases they're selling them.
After the U.S. withdrawal back in 2001, the Biden administration froze billions in aid, and coupled with a drought, it has severely impacted the Afghan economy. Can you touch on what impact it is having on the people and the state of the country?
Well, there is no formal economy to talk of. Everything is in the informal space, and it's very difficult for them with the sanctions and with no economic framework or financial structure to operate, to allow salaries to be paid in basic government entities or for the economy to move forward. And the pressure that we can put upon them, again, is about their economy. They care about their economy. They want to trade. They want to be recognized. And that's where we can put some pressure for them to, abide by those values and principles of the international community to bring them back in. So clearly the economy matters. Clearly they appreciate, in fact, they told me they appreciate the funding that comes on the humanitarian side. But that's one thing to appreciate, it's the other to behave. It's the other to do the right thing by women and girls. But the economy is certainly up front and center. There are big issues around that.
Part of your work is about amplifying the voices of women and sharing their stories. Can you share some of those stories with us that you've heard about some of the rights that they're advocating for?
You speak to Afghan women, they are the best you'll find anywhere. And you can see that with those who are in diaspora. Incredibly smart and really beautiful women from the inside out. That's been snuffed. It is International Women's Day. Every woman that knows that their daughter can go to school tomorrow in the developed world needs to think about that and raise their voice to amplify what is a right for Afghan women who have daughters. And that does help, whether you tweet it or you speak about it or you charge your representative in the parliament. It's so important around the world that we don't let this die.
Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and happy International Women's Day.
Our thanks to Mona for that, and we still have much more to get to. Is coming up a new lawsuit against Tiger Woods, what his former longtime girlfriend says he made her sign, and why she wants out. Plus, you may be getting the sniffles a little bit more often, why allergy season is actually getting longer. But next, it was once in financial trouble, but now Lego is on the rise. We take a closer look at its newfound success by the numbers.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
on the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
This is where the newsmakers come first in the morning to be heard. America's #1 morning show.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000. Yeah. Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
Wherever the story, ABC's Good Morning America is right there.
2
of the hottest rappers coming out of Atlanta.
Young Thug and Gunna.
Charged in a sweeping 56-count indictment.
What is this? Rap is back on trial.
You decide to admit your crimes over a beat, I'm gonna use it. What is happening?
There's lots of us locked up in prison. We're not gonna let that happen on our watch. Not with hip-hop music, using our lyrics. We're gonna fight back.
Rap, trap, hip-hop on trial. Only on Hulu.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. Been a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes,
Whoopi! This mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial breaks.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby. It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
America's Next Top Model, a global phenomenon. Ciao.
I could not believe the things that came out of those people's mouths.
Watching back this show,
It didn't age well.
no.
What in the cultural appropriation?
I didn't think so much into it.
I didn't think anything about it either.
Now I'm like,
Hello! It's a reality show!
America's Next Top Model, 20 years later. Impact by Nightline, now streaming on Hulu. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey, I'm David Muir. Wherever the story, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Danish toy maker Lego is reporting a boost in profits, and it is lapping some of its competition in the toy industry. So let's take a look by the numbers. Lego said yesterday its profits increased 5% in 2022, with net profits up $2 billion over the prior year. Sales were up 12%, and that's happening despite the company raising prices on some of its higher priced sets. The company says it did not raise prices on its lower cost multicolored Lego bricks. Lego CEO called 2022 a milestone year for the 90-year-old company as it opened 155 new stores, many of them in China, to reach a total of 904 locations worldwide. Lego bricks are now sold in more than 130 countries. It became a popular pandemic product as lockdowns kept families home. Lego said some 48% of the company's products were new last year, with theme partnerships with franchises like Star Wars and Harry Potter that have proved very popular, as well as its Lego City sets. The company's also jumping into the digital world with new apps and a $1 billion investment in video game developer Epic Games, as Lego's looking to create a child-friendly metaverse. Now the world's biggest toy company, Lego, last year generated almost twice as much revenue of rival Mattel, which is the maker of Barbie. They said their sales were flat last year, and Hasbro saw annual revenue actually drop 9% last year, as the maker of Monopoly and Play-Doh, they saw a tough holiday sales, according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, for the trivia buffs out there, Lego was founded in 1932. The company's name comes from Danish words leg godt, which means play well. We have much more ahead here on Prime. A freight train slides off the tracks and catches fire, the natural hazard that caused it to derail. And in our road to the Oscars, nominated actress Michelle Williams on growing up in the industry, the fight for pay equity, and the pressure of playing Steven Spielberg's mother in a film he directed.
So I thought I would be a lot more nervous than I was. I was really just excited to go to work and excited to make his mom come back to life.
What does it take to be America's #1 news? It takes asking the straightforward, tough questions.
Do you believe that Donald Trump should ever be president again?
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah.
Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
The news-making interviews.
You said that there were 6 friends. One of them was sick.
Yeah.
Do you have future political aspirations?
Going to the front line.
The search for survivors. How does this war end?
And getting to the heart of the story.
Thank you for being here. We'll be here for the long run.
ABC News, #1 in the morning, the #1 newscast, #1 in daytime talk, Friday nights, Sunday mornings versus the competition, and the #1 streaming news. Thank you for making ABC News America's trusted, straightforward first choice.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. Been a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
We're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
America's Next Top Model, a global phenomenon. Ciao.
I could not believe the things that came out of those people's mouths.
Watching back this show, it didn't age well. No.
What in the cultural appropriation?
I didn't think so much into it.
I didn't think anything about it either.
Now I'm like, hello, it's a reality show.
America's Next Top Model, 20 years later. Impact by Nightline, now streaming on Hulu.
Get ready, America, every Friday.
The hottest trends, styles, and must-have. What's the right stuff to buy right now? I really love that. It's time to buy the right stuff.
Yes!
And save big time, too.
The right stuff.
Fridays on GMA. You're gonna love it.
13 women opened their doors to the man who would end their lives.
Truth and Lies, The Boston Strangler, the new true crime podcast series. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts. And March 17th, watch Boston Strangler, streaming on Hulu.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
A plea to find a missing postal worker, a dangerously close call for 2 podcasters, and the new lawsuit filed against Tiger Woods. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
The family of Kiara Coles, a Chicago postal worker who disappeared more than 4 years ago, is calling for the FBI to take the lead in the search. Coles' mother, Karen Phillips, spoke at a vigil held for her daughter Tuesday, which also called for more to be done in the search.
Can't nobody imagine the pain that I go through daily, missing my child, not hearing her voice, not knowing if she had her child, not knowing if she's suffering every day.
Coles, who was 3 months pregnant at the time, went missing in October 2018. Videos released last year show Coles leaving her home with a person of interest in making withdrawals from an ATM the night she disappeared.
It got so quiet in here. How did I...
A close call for 2 podcasters inside a Houston cafe. Nathan Reeves and Alexi Reyes posted this to social media, showing them recording a podcast together over the weekend when an SUV suddenly slammed into the glass behind them.
It was kind of like fight or flight, and I flew. I got out of there.
The duo came back on camera saying they were okay and filmed their interactions with police afterward. No details have been released about how this crash happened, but the duo says they're thankful to be alive. A CSX freight train caught on fire in West Virginia after a derailment caused by a rock slide. Officials with CSX and West Virginia Emergency Management said the train's 4 locomotives and 9 coal cars all derailed, but that all of the cars were empty. At least 1 locomotive and fuel car ended up in the New River, with officials saying diesel fuel was observed entering the river. No evacuations were ordered, and CSX said there was no threat to the public. The train had 3 crew members who were all being treated for non-life-threatening injuries.
A new forecast predicts allergy season is going to be worse than usual this year.
U.S. Climate Central says climate change is making allergy seasons longer in more than 170 U.S. cities, in part because the freeze-free stretch from the end of winter to the first frost of fall is now longer, which means more days for growing, more days for plants to release pollen and make you miserable. Since 1970, the West has added 27 more pollen days, the rest of the country adding just more than a dozen.
Tiger Woods' girlfriend is asking a Florida judge to remove her from a non-disclosure agreement that she claims she was forced to sign when they started dating in 2017. Erica Herman filed a civil complaint Monday, saying she felt the NDA was, quote, invalid and unenforceable. Her complaint cited a law allowing NDAs to be nullified in cases of sexual assault, though she did not make any specific accusations against Woods in the complaint. In a separate lawsuit from October, Herman claimed agents working with Woods tricked her into leaving the home she lived in with the golfer and that she was locked out afterwards. In a motion to dismiss that complaint, Woods' lawyers said she didn't qualify as a tenant.
Late author Toni Morrison has been immortalized on a new USPS stamp. The new forever stamp of the Nobel laureate was unveiled Tuesday at a tribute at Princeton University. The event featured virtual guest appearances from former President Obama, Michelle Obama, and Oprah Winfrey. Morrison, who died in 2018 at the age of 88, became the first Black woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1993.
Well, award season is here, and it's an especially unique time for this next nominee. Michelle Williams' career has been marked with moving performances, followed by noteworthy Oscar nominations. And she recently earned a Best Actress nod from the Academy for her role in The Fabelmans, a semi-autobiographical film from and about famed director Steven Spielberg. In the movie, Williams brings Spielberg's mother back to life on screen, a woman faced with a difficult choice who ultimately decides to follow her heart. 42-year-old Williams is a mother herself. She says she looked internally for inspiration, something she explained to our Lindsay Davis in a one-on-one conversation.
Sammy, we're going to use Daddy's camera to film it. Only crash the train once, okay? Then after we get the film developed, you can watch it crash over and over till it's not so scary anymore.
5th Oscar nomination. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Is there still the same amount of excitement each time?
Maybe a little more.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How so?
It's not easy to get here. No. And to see people that you know that you've worked with before and to feel like things are sort of returning. You know, there's the communities that you build, like when you make a movie or a TV show or a piece of theater, and then there's like the larger community, and it's just so nice to be sort of united with people and brought back together. It feels super meaningful.
Tell me about the pressure, I'm assuming, that there must have been to play Steven Spielberg's mom, right? I mean, he opened up the vault for you, was showing you home videos and pictures. What did that feel like to really make this role sing?
It felt like pressure for a second until you realize he loved his mom. He's making this to honor both of his parents who made him who he is. And he hands you the information. He's just open like this, and it's just pouring out of him. And it very quickly goes from feeling like, oh gosh, how am I going to do this, to feeling like excited and inspired and made a part of, you know, of his family. So I thought I would be a lot more nervous than I was. I was really just excited to go to work and excited to make his mom come back to life.
How did you channel your own mothering into the role of Mitzi?
So I really thought so much about who is the mother that made these children, that raised these children, who went off and lived their individuated, expressive, full adult lives. That's a huge accomplishment. Who was she? Why are they still so enamored with her. And I think it was so much about their childhood, her acceptance of them, her desire to play with them, the attention that she gave to them. And I really think that she makes a very bold choice in the film. She makes a decision for herself. What I think she did in that moment, truly, was that by aligning herself with her passion and her desire and choosing to live so boldly, so honestly, I think that she gave her children the same ability as adults.
So beautiful what you made, Dolly. You really see me.
I think they saw their mom do it first.
I'm curious how you were so successful at creating this empathetic character. Because on its face, when we think of, oh, this mom was having an affair and she chose that life, right? As one of the daughters says to her, like, you're being so selfish. And yet we have compassion for Mitzi. And I think that has a lot to do with the depth that you portrayed her. I mean, how did you do that so successfully?
Thank you. I don't know, but I think that she was living in tune with herself. I think that they also knew that ultimately she was making the right decision.
This is the most selfish thing I have ever done. But I've got to do this now because, Sammy, you do what your heart says you have to. So you don't owe anyone your life. Not even me.
She was so aligned. You know, she was an artist. She was a piano player. Her spirit was so exuberant and it was so exquisitely tuned that I think that they ultimately knew that she was doing what she had to do. While it might be painful in the moment, I think that they could have respect for it.
In 2019, you spoke before Congress about pay equity, and you've talked about that day in superlatives, about how purposeful and meaningful that day was for you. Where do you think we are right now with that in Hollywood, and why was it so important for you to speak out?
I felt like I was being called upon. I felt like I didn't have a choice. I felt like I found myself in the middle of this moment, and I better learn to speak up. And I stepped into it, and it will remain the thing I might be the most proud of professionally. And I see a shift. I see a shift because I hear that there's a shift. People come up to me, men, women, men who own businesses, and say, I realized something, and I didn't know it until I heard your example. So that's when I feel like change is happening.
First movie that you saw that really impacted you?
It's a Steven Spielberg movie, Empire of the Sun.
Favorite snack that you enjoy eating while you're watching a movie?
Always popcorn.
Person you're most looking forward to bumping into on the red carpet?
I mean, this is so geeky, but I'm really excited to the people I made the movie with. We all loved each other so much, and these things are always a way to reconnect with each other.
And you can watch the Oscars on ABC Sunday night at 8 p.m. Coming up in our next hour here on Prime, Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai is making her mark on Hollywood. She's bringing stories of hope and humanity to a wider audience. And we have another one-on-one with the activist turned executive producer for the Oscar-nominated short documentary Stranger at the Gate. And you can catch all of Lindsay's conversations with the stars in our three-part series Road to the Oscars. The first airs tomorrow night at 8:30. Then Friday night at 8 and 8:30. And time now for our image of the day. This image of devotees cheering on as colored powder and water is sprayed during celebrations marking Holi in India today. Holi is the festival of colors. It marks the symbolic victory of good over evil, and that the end of winter is here also as millions celebrate around the world. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Trevor Ault. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks for streaming with us. Coming up in the next hour, people with asthma have been struggling with the shortage of a life-saving medication, what's now making the supply issues even worse. And Malala Yousafzai has dedicated her life to pushing for change. Now she's turned to filmmaking to help tell impactful stories. She tells us about the conflict behind her new Oscar-nominated documentary.
With so much at stake in our world right now, we wanted to thank you for your trust and for making ABC News America's #1 news.
And thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
After an extraordinary news-making year, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings. This is where the newsmakers come first in the morning to be heard. America's #1 morning show.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000. Yeah. Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
Wherever the story, ABC's Good Morning America is right there.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5. Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi!
Is this mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what people don't see during the commercial break.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into. That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby.
It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
America's Next Top Model, a global phenomenon. Ciao.
I could not believe the things that came out of those people's mouths.
Watching back this show, it didn't age well.
No. What in the cultural appropriation?
I didn't think so much into it.
I didn't think anything about it either.
Now I'm like,
Hello! It's a reality show!
America's Next Top Model, 20 years later. Impact by Nightline, now streaming on Hulu.
Reporting from Monterey Park, California, I'm Robin Roberts. Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
I'm Trevor Alden for Lindsay Davis tonight. Thank you for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. Opioids cause 52% of all poisoning deaths in American infants and toddlers aged 5 and under. That's according to a new study in the Journal of Pediatrics out today. These numbers add to the growing evidence the opioid epidemic has also affected the pediatric population. In addition to opioids accounting for the most deaths, these findings showed most cases of fatal poisonings were in white children around the age of 1. Approximately 40% of those cases were due to accidental overdose. The majority of cases occurred within children's homes with a biological parent supervising. New developments in the case of a 6-year-old accused of shooting his teacher in January. Newport News Commonwealth's attorney says he will not file charges against that child. In an interview, he said he does not believe a 6-year-old can have criminal intent, which is required to pursue a case. Now to the fight for action to abortion care in this country. 5 days ago, Utah's governor said he'll sign a recently passed bill that would ban abortion clinics, meaning there will be no abortion clinics in the state starting next year. And that's part of a trend we're seeing play out nationwide, from Texas and Louisiana to Idaho and West Virginia. Abortion procedures are outlawed in nearly a dozen states now, and that number could grow in the months ahead. We'll want to begin with the Justice Department's sobering conclusion to its investigation into the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department, finding a damning pattern of illegal and discriminatory behavior, including unlawful traffic stops, detentions, harassment, and racial bias, all of it disproportionately targeting black people. And all this comes after the death of Breonna Taylor last year. Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas reports.
Tonight, Attorney General Merrick Garland flying to Louisville to deliver a stunning rebuke of the city's police department, detailing what he believes is a troubling pattern of racial bias and constitutional rights violations.
This conduct is unacceptable.
is heartbreaking.
The Attorney General visibly impacted by a DOJ investigation, finding systemic abuse against the city's black residents, including the disproportionate use of excessive force.
Some officers have demonstrated disrespect for the people they are sworn to protect. Some have videotaped themselves throwing drinks at pedestrians from their cars, insulted people with disabilities, and called black people monkeys, animal, and boy.
The Justice Department's 2-year probe launched after the 2020 police shooting death of Breonna Taylor during a botched raid.
Where's the emergency? I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
Louisville Metro PD executing a so-called no-knock warrant, killing Taylor, who had no connection to the alleged crime they were investigating.
That it took this to even have somebody look into this department. I don't know.
Today's report finding more than 60% of no-knock search warrants and forced entries into buildings involve black people. The alarming findings come as the Department of Justice announces they're opening a separate review into the Memphis Police Department after the horrific beating death of Tyree Nichols earlier this year.
Damn, I didn't do anything.
The 5 officers charged in Nichols' death were members of the now deactivated Scorpion Unit, formed to patrol high-crime hotspots. The DOJ now examining the use of specialized units like Scorpion within law enforcement across the country.
Our thanks to Pierre Thomas. And next we head to Mexico with new information tonight in the kidnappings of 4 Americans. One of the survivors told her mother the terrifying details of how she witnessed her friends being shot. Our Matt Rivers is in Mexico City tonight.
Tonight, new details emerging about that horrific kidnapping of 4 Americans that left 2 of them dead after they drove to a Mexican border town for cosmetic surgery. The mother of survivor Latavia Tay McGee telling CNN that the white minivan carrying McGee and friends Eric James Williams, Zindell Brown, and Shaid Woodard was first hit by a van and then gunfire erupted.
Shaid and Zell and Eve, they all got shot at the same time, and she watched them die.
Tonight, this new photo showing McGee in an ambulance moments after she was rescued in Mexico. The 4 entering Matamoros around 9 a.m. on Friday so that McGee could get that cosmetic surgery. Nearly 2 hours later, gunmen opening fire on the group, then loading them into a pickup truck. Officials say the gunmen then took the group to various locations, including a clinic, to cause confusion and throw off authorities. After a massive manhunt, authorities finding McGee and Williams still alive inside this wooden house early Tuesday morning, nearly 8 miles from where they were taken. The bodies of Woodard and Brown found at that same location, covered in blankets, according to a source close to the investigation. That same source also saying one of the men was wearing a surgical gown, though it's unclear if he received medical treatment before he died.
Matt Rivers for us tonight. Matt, thank you. And there's been yet another incident in the nation's skies with a fight breaking out on a flight from Dallas to Phoenix before it could take off. Some passengers stepping in to try to stop it. Here's ABC's transportation correspondent Gio Benitez.
Tonight, shocking new video of a brawl erupting on board a Southwest Airlines flight. Fists flying as a fight breaks out between 2 men on this plane before it took off from Dallas to Phoenix Monday. Other passengers attempting to separate the men. This video showing one of the men trying to explain what happened.
I'm telling everybody what happened. He approached me aggressively with my family. I don't play with my family. Tell him what happened. Tell him what you did.
Witnesses say both men were removed from the plane. It comes after that terrifying mid-air attack, a passenger seen here trying to stab a flight attendant multiple times on a cross-country United flight. After so many incidents in the skies and close calls on the runways, the acting chief of the FAA in the hot seat on Capitol Hill, and we pressed him on what lawmakers were asking. Mr. Nolan, I think that the average American is probably wondering what is going on. At least 6 close calls here. Does the FAA have a grasp on the situation?
The FAA absolutely has a grasp on this situation, and it's something that we look at every day. I can tell you that the system is strong, is safe, and resilient. We operate the most complex airspace system in the world, bar none.
Our thanks to Gio Benitez. Next, the shortage of a life-saving asthma medication is now being compounded by the recent shutdown of a pharmaceutical company. Here's ABC's Lionel Moise with the details.
Growing concern about a shortage of one of the most common asthma medications, albuterol.
All of a sudden, my chest starts hurting, and I just physically cannot take a breath.
It's been on the FDA's drug shortage list since October, but the recent shutdown of a major manufacturer could make finding albuterol even harder. Illinois-based Acorn Operating Co. announced last month it was closing all its locations as it filed for bankruptcy. Pharmacies are now scrambling to keep albuterol stocked.
We're checking secondary and tertiary vendors if our primary vendor doesn't have it, so it's just creating a little bit more legwork on our part.
The impact could be great, with 25 million Americans, or about 1 in 12, currently with asthma, and more than 4,100 deaths in the U.S. per year.
I would do anything I could to get this medication.
It can cause loss of breath, wheezing, chest tightness, and coughing, and could lead to asthma attacks.
When it gets to that point, I need that medication. I take my inhaler immediately.
Medications like albuterol, used in inhalers and nebulizers, keep the condition under control and could be life-saving.
All right, thanks to Lionel. 2 cross-country storms have at least 16 states and 40 million people on alert for heavy snow, flooding, rain, and high winds. In Lake Tahoe, a new blanket of heavy snow, and that storm's now heading east. It's set to hit the northeast by Friday. ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano, of course, is tracking it all. Rob, walk us through this.
Well, Trevor, this next storm coming into California is going to be much warmer than the storms we've seen slam the West in the past month, and it's going to bring a whole nother set of difficulties. Got an atmospheric river component to it, which means it's tapping some of the subtropical moisture, and that deep plume is pointed right at California. To rise in northern California tomorrow night, heavy rain. Snow levels are going to rise all the way to 8,000 feet, and that means that we're going to see some melting of the snow below that. We'll see some runoff, and we'll see some of that rain really take down some snow. So flooding a likelihood, and some added weight on top of those roofs that are covered with snow already. Mudslides potentially. Most of this is north of, say, Santa Barbara, but 4 to 8 inches of rainfall and a widespread flood watch for a good chunk of California. While that's happening, a storm out ahead of it is bringing some heavy snow across parts of the upper Midwest. Again, from Minnesota for Wisconsin, 6 to 8 inches there. Some wet snow in Chicago to Cleveland, down I-80 and 90, getting into the New York Metro by Friday the evening rush. It'll be a decent storm at this point. Mostly a wet snow, I think, for the highly populated areas, but certainly some plowable snow farther inland. So both coasts being affected by storms. Trevor?
Rob Marciano for us. Rob, thank you. And we still have much more to get to. Coming up, Malala Yousafzai on executive producing an Oscar-nominated documentary, why she set her sights on filmmaking and how she plans to use it to create even more change.
Through my production company, I hope that I work with women and young artists to reflect the world as they see it. It's not about what's right and what's wrong.
But next, clashes between police and protesters, this deadly incident leading thousands to demonstrate in Greece.
Whenever news breaks,
the crush of families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on. If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Reporting from Quincy, Massachusetts, I'm Stephanie Ramos. Wherever the story is, we will take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
We're tracking several headlines around the world. Protesters and police clashed in the Greek city of Thessaloniki after more than 15,000 people gathered in protest over a train accident that killed 57 people and crumbled the state of Greece's rail network. Mass protesters threw oil bombs at police who used tear gas to disperse lingering crowds. A foiled multi-million-dollar heist at Chile's largest airport left 2 dead this morning, highlighting concerns of rising crime in the Andean nation. According to officials, about 10 robbers entered the airport in 3 vehicles after they tied up a security guard. That plane had just arrived from Miami. It was carrying $32.5 million, was supposed to be transported locally by security provider Brinks. A Nigerian judge refused a request from an opposition candidate who lost last month's presidential election to stop the electoral body from reconfiguring a voting system for state elections that are set for Saturday. This weekend, Nigerians will return to the polls to elect state governors across the country just 2 weeks after the disputed presidential election. Pakistani activist Malala Yousafzai has dedicated her life to change and to the education of women and children. It's a feat the world has known about for years. And now the youngest ever recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize has turned her sights to movie making and production as a way to tell impactful stories to wider audiences. One of her latest projects is serving as the executive producer for the now Oscar-nominated short documentary film Stranger at the Gate. It's the story of an Indiana mosque and a man who had plans to bomb their community. Our Lindsay Davis spoke with Malala one-on-one to talk about that documentary, her future plans for filmmaking, and how humanity and forgiveness can make all the difference.
So I walk in the building, and all of a sudden, it's like I felt my stomach tighten up, chest tighten up. I tried to keep my senses about me. I got very anxious. I didn't trust them. I considered myself somebody as a future news story on Al Jazeera. By the end of the night, I figured they would have me in the basement with a sword to my throat.
What drew you to Stranger at the Gate?
When I first saw Stranger at the Gate, I was moved and inspired by the story, and I have become an executive producer of the documentary, and I have entered this world of production, and I believe that through storytelling we can connect people, we can inspire people, and there was no better opportunity than Stranger at the Gate for me to support, and because this has the message of the shared humanity that the world needs right now, and it's about the values of forgiveness, compassion, and kindness, and I connect with that, and I think it's important for us to spread that message.
He sits at my feet. He hugged my leg. This guy doesn't know me. Hugged my leg. That was pretty heavy.
I comforted him. I gave him the attention. I think that's the basic memory that I have. Not only just with Mac, I would do this with any guest.
You talk about forgiveness, compassion, and kindness. Obviously, your main character here had intended to bomb a mosque. Then at the end, he decides he's going to actually convert. What would you hope that the audience takes away?
This documentary for me is not limited to the story of a Muslim community. This applies to any place where we have created divisions, we have created hatred against different sects, groups, gender, and it reminds us that it is important that we connect with each other. We see the commonalities among us, and we see that in Max and Bibi's story. They went through a whole journey, and Bibi was willing to share her love, and Mac was actually willing to change. That is so important, the willingness to have an open heart and to change. And I hope that that people learn from it and they think about what role they can play in creating more harmony in the world.
You showed me the right way. You showed me what true humanity is about. Just put Islam aside for a second. You showed me what true humanity was about.
And you talked about being involved as in the role of executive producer in more projects. To that end, you've created a company called Extracurricular. What kinds of themes, what kinds of projects can we expect from you in the future?
Through my production company, I hope that I work with women and young artists to reflect the world as they see it. It's not about what's right and what's wrong, and we need to promote a specific perspective and point of view. I think we need to have as many diverse point of views as we can, because we need to ensure that it's not narrow to one perspective. I hope that that more people get a chance to bring their stories to the screen, and I'm here for them. I want to collaborate with them, work with them. I think there's potential in Hollywood for change. I am so proud that I'm here as a 25-year-old Pakistani producer, and I hope that many more like me get a chance to be here and to share their talent, their skills, and their creativity with the world.
Of course, you were just 17 years old when you won the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest ever. How do you feel now that working in Hollywood and with movies and documentaries, how can that help to further propel your message?
At the center of my activism for girls' education had been storytelling. I began with my own story, and I have been sharing the stories of girls around the world. Media has played such a critical role in my activism from the start, whether that was through blogging or doing documentaries. And I believe that I can take a step further in that. So this is still connected to all the work that I do, and I hope that through production, through producing comedies, animation, documentaries, movies, TV shows, I would be able to share more with the world from the perspective of women, young artists, and bring more stories that entertain everybody, that connect everybody.
You're only 25. Beyond movies, do you have thoughts, or are you focused entirely in that space right now, or do you have grander plans for the future?
I am busy in a lot of things. I do campaign for girls' education. I have entered the production world as well, and I write. I speak out for women who do not have the attention right now that they need, especially women in Afghanistan. Girls have been denied their right to education. Women cannot go to work. So it's time for leaders to hear their voices. And through the production world, I hope I can bring attention to these deeper issues that often we do not talk about. So it's all part of work. It's all around storytelling.
Favorite movie or a movie in your life that has made a very significant impact on you?
I absolutely enjoyed Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mrs. Wang. Mrs. Wang.
Mrs. Wang, are you with us?
I am paying attention.
I think it deserves all the credit and the appreciation.
What's happening?
And the other movie which I am deeply inspired by is Joyland. That was the first Pakistani movie to be shortlisted for Oscars, and it is produced by a Pakistani director, writer, and it talks about the power of love, connection, and also the tension that we face in our family when we live in a patriarchy. It's not just the women who are affected, but it's the men too that are harmed and damaged by patriarchy. So that's such a powerful story. I really enjoyed that. I enjoy watching any TV shows.
Okay. All right, Malala, thank you so much for your time. All the best.
Thank you so much.
We're going to be rooting for Stranger at the Gate.
Our thanks again to Lindsay, and you can watch the Oscars on ABC Sunday night at 8 p.m. and tomorrow on ABC News Live. She is one of the stars of the most talked about films this award season. Stephanie Hsu played a dual role in Everything Everywhere All at Once, a disgruntled daughter desperate for understanding, and an omniversal villain seeking to be understood. She talks to Lindsay about how she balanced the two. And you can catch all of Lindsay's conversations with the stars in our three-part series, Road to the Oscars. The first airs tomorrow night at 8:30 and then Friday night at 8 and 8:30. And still to come here on Prime, inside the joyful and the colorful celebration of new beginnings, how millions around the world are celebrating Holi.
America's Next Top Model, a global phenomenon. Ciao.
I could not believe the things that came out of those people's mouths.
Watching back this show, it didn't age well. No.
What in the cultural appropriation?
I didn't think so much in it at the time.
I didn't think anything about it either. Now I'm like,
hello, it's a reality show.
America's Next Top Model, 20 years later. Impact by Nightline, now streaming on Hulu. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television. After an extraordinary news-making year, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Well, today is officially Holi, also known as the Hindu Festival of Colors, which marks the start of spring, new beginnings, and good triumphing over evil. And our Ashid Singh caught up with people who celebrate across the country in this joyful and colorful story.
A day of unlimited fun for millions celebrating Holi, the Hindu Festival of Colors, marking the start of spring, new beginnings, and good triumphing over evil. The holiday most popular in and around India. But many finding ways to keep the festival spirit alive here in the U.S. Red Bharat is spreading the joy through music. The band embarking on their annual Festival of Colors tour.
Why link this tour to Holi?
The idea was, well, let's have this color kind of presenting itself through the different sounds of the diaspora. When people think about Indian music, they think about just Bollywood or Bhangra, and that's it. There's so much other stuff.
Sunny Jain, founding the Brooklyn-based group in 2008, blending modern and traditional music to create an electrifying sound.
The idea was to be this identity of the South Asian American. Everyone in the band is bringing their own perspective.
He plays the dole, a percussion instrument that's a staple in any Holi soundtrack.
It's a Punjabi instrument. It's literally a section of a tree trunk that's hollowed out. It's an integral sound to Red Bharat, just because I love this drum.
Up in Buffalo, Akurti Baberia, creating Holi products and inspiring the younger generation with her business, Culture Khazana.
In 2017, I had my first child. I'm like, how am I gonna show my kid where I come from?
Her classroom kits, puzzles, and toys sharing various parts of Indian culture and reaching members of all communities.
During the holiday season, I have majority of non-South Asians purchasing these products to share. That tells you how people really want to experience culture.
Holi is about coming together, which is why moments like these are what she holds most dear. Her family, playing with the colors that she helped create.
We're getting color everywhere. What's it mean to you?
He's owning it. He's owning his heritage. He's owning his culture. This is a moment of pride for me. I'm seeing in front of my eyes that there's this next generation which wants to just celebrate and enjoy.
That is Ashin Singh reporting, and that is our show for tonight. I'm Trevor Alden for Lindsay Davis. ABC News Live is here for you all night with the latest news, context, and analysis. You can always find us on Hulu, on the ABC News app, and of course on abcnews.com.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of